Former Republican prisoner who was left paralysed after a loyalist gun attack has handed a letter to the Northern Ireland office objecting to draft guidelines on who will qualify for a Troubles pension. Christy Cummings says he fears he could be blocked from receiving a payout if the scheme excludes some prisoners. Our political correspondent Enda McClafferty has more on this. What does the letter say, Enda?
Well, Donna, Christopher Cummings was one of 3 doormen shot outside the Glengannon Hotel near Dungannon back in 1997 by the LVF. Now, one of his colleagues was killed and he was left paralysed from the chest down. Now, despite his injuries, he fears that he will be excluded from the pension payout, and that's because he served 7 years in jail for planting a hoax bomb outside a house. Now, that's a conviction he is still contesting today, but nonetheless, he feels that under the current draft guidelines would state that those prisoners who served more than 2.5 years in prison will have their cases assessed by a judge-led panel before they receive any payout. And he feels strongly that that discriminates against him. And he laid out all his concerns today in that letter to the Secretary of State, which was delivered to Stormont House earlier. And his son Ruairi then spoke afterwards to the press.
This is very, very important to my father, because the night that my father was injured and shot, he was doing an innocent night's work, and he was shot and saved hundreds of lives that night. And in our eyes and everybody else's eyes, my father's a victim, just like hundreds and thousands of other people. And unfortunately, his past conviction, he's going to be declined this pension. Where in other societies and other modern days, he'd be a hero for saving lives.
The Sinn Féin President Mary Lou MacDonald was questioned today about the Troubles pension. What is her view?
Well, she was asked this morning on Good Morning Ulster about her party's position not to endorse these draft guidelines, which they say are discriminatory against former Republican prisoners. Now, during the course of that interview, she also talked about combatant victims out there being distinguished different from, if you like, other victims who suffered during the Troubles. And by combatant victims, she means, of course, those former paramilitaries and indeed members of the security forces who were injured during the 30 years of the conflict. Now, some, despite Sinn Féin saying they've used this language before, some unionist politicians out there are not so sure. So have a listen to exactly what the Sinn Féin president said this morning, and then the reaction from a DUP MP.
I believe there is a clear distinction, obviously, between combatants and civilian victims. Of course, there absolutely is. But what we will not support is the scheme that is very deliberately and rather crudely designed to be partisan and to be partial and to make judgments as to who was right and who was wrong.
Unfortunately, the message this morning from Mary Lou is utter confusion and doublespeak. They have never been able to distinguish that there's different types of victims, and a person who inflicts the violence and becomes a victim themselves is very different from the person who has innocently been made a victim.
The upshot of all of this, of course, is that the victims out there are still waiting to get their payments. The payments that you thought were going to come by the end of May, of course. Now, MLAs are due to debate this in the Chamber later today, and then all eyes will be on the Secretary of State to see if he can find a way, if you like, to move this whole process forward.
Enda McClafferty. Live sedation.